So right now, it looks like the biggest witness that we have not seen yet is most likely the coroner. Now, the coroner is going to tell us where the individuals got shot, the most important, which shots were the fatal shots, and from which direction the shots came from. Once we know that, we have a pretty good idea of, how they actually died. Did they die from a drive-by, or did they die from close gunshot wounds? And that's very, very, very important for the jury to kind of get the story on how it is these victims ended up dead. And I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be the most nervous part for the defense, being that they kind of smooth sailed through this whole DNA and cell phone process, which is, let's be honest, this is the peak of the trial right now. This is the peak, and it's not looking good for the prosecution. After the mistrial was denied, it actually helped the defense. So they got to really scramble on this last one and these last couple, witnesses, to convince the jury that, the right decision is to send a man on the death penalty. And yeah, I'm not really feeling what the prosecution brought to the table so far, and the general consensus is the same. I'm sure Melly fans are pretty happy, whether or not he did it or not. That's on you. I choose to stay partial on this because it's just a very interesting trial to look over, especially with the new change in the death penalty being enacted by Governor DeSantis, last April. So all this stuff is really, really just kind of new, and I think that's why a lot of people are paying attention. So give a like and subscribe if you like these clips and these summaries on the trial. They take a long time to do just because you got to extrapolate the important information. So, thanks. Listen. So we're getting back to the Melly trial, and they're about to go over some of the phone evidence. So let's check it out.
So why don't we take a listen to the prosecution's case?
Going on to this next slide here, what are you illustrating in this particular map?
I think the
So
green
this
dots
shows
are,
the green dots
it says
are T-Mobile towers in the South Florida area at the time of 2018, at the time relevant to this analysis or case. And the takeaways there are just there. You see in densely populated areas, there's a much higher concentration of towers, right? Because there's more people who have more devices, so there's more demand of network resources. So the providers need to have more towers with smaller coverage areas to provide service to those.
So he's explaining basically this is like a coverage map in terms of where the towers are, where they primarily located. You'll see them basically in the most densely populated areas, etc., etc.
Devices. When you get to more rural areas where there's fewer people, fewer devices, the networks.
I want to get to the good stuff.
And then 0.68 miles from this tower.
Okay, and in terms of what can you tell about how the phones are related in distance from one another based on this slide?
Distance from one another. Well, both phones moved north and then east. We know that the blue phone and the red phone are both over here, and now they're over here in the period.
Can you have an opinion as to whether or not they separated during this time frame?
During this time frame?
Yes, 417 to 423.
So she's trying to basically put the phones together and get him to confirm that these phones never separated, and if they did, at what point did they separate? Just to basically get some intel on when exactly did Melly leave the truck, as opposed to him being there the whole time.
I don't know. To me, I don't think there's enough data here to form.
Now, when he says that he doesn't know, this comes off as very weak for the prosecution. And of course, the defense is going to rip apart this lack of knowing, so to speak. So you'll get to see that as well.
Now going on to the 772-713-9807 between 12:01 and 12:12 p.m. on October 26th of 2018. What are you illustrating with this particular image?
So at 12:01, first there's an incoming call from the turquoise phone 91158, and then at 12:01, the red phone is in this band, 0.92 miles from the tower. At 12:03, it's 0.6.
Now I want to stop this because I do want to get to the defense and how they felt about this particular this part of the trial. Should be somewhere around right here. Okay, so this is when one of Melly's lawyers is kind of pressing him.
With these formulas, anything like that?
Yeah, that's that calculation for time in advance. Again, that's not unique to T-Mobile. That's how all phones have to function on cellular networks. They have to have time in advance measurements of. That's what we talk about multipliers and.
So it's just T-Mobile gives it to you. You have 100% trust in T-Mobile and its records, so you just get them and you go off of that, correct?
I plot the data from T-Mobile and do an analysis. I don't take anything for given as I'm doing my analysis.
But you don't know if the numbers are correct because you don't have an engineer validating or rechecking anything, do you? So
I'm taking. I'm relying on the accuracy of the records. Yes.
all right. So basically, you're telling us that we're to trust an undisclosed calculation as being accurate.
Arguments.
Right. And do you not have any of the measurements for the underlying true call data?
I don't think so. I don't know. There's a lot of columns on this engineering report. It's possible that something is buried there, but I don't think so.
Okay. Go back to your report.
So there was a lot of this going back and forth in the trial, where basically they just didn't believe in the reliability of the evidence, and that was a big victory for, I want to say, the defense, mostly because there was some evidence that got called into question due to the fact that it was submitted late. So I believe that it was referring to YNW Bortland and YNW Sack Chaser's phones also being entered into the evidence, and because the prosecution basically, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know how they slipped and dropped the ball, but basically they got the information into court too late. So the judge let their witness testify, but they did not let them submit the info from all the other phones other than Melly's. Trying to remember who this guy is.
What I do is the STO, the shorthand. That is the specific DNA.
Let's see what this guy
is included as a contributor.
Okay, so this is the DNA analyst that we're about to watch. I want you to watch closely and just basically listen to the lingo and how they're describing things. A lot of terminology that you'll hear is the unknown suspect or unknown person, and also the combination between one or two samples. So you're going to hear a lot of lingo about that because they want to know what mixed, what didn't, what got touched, what didn't. Were you able to pinpoint whether or not it was one of the victims or if it was the killer who sat in the back seat? So this is pretty much what he goes over in detail.
To a sample, and the competing hypothesis is that the evidence or the DNA profile is coming from an unrelated unknown individual. So that is
Unrelated unknown individual. So
how the likelihood ratio is set up. Person one or person of interest is the contributor to the evidence versus it's coming from an unknown, unrelated individual.
Okay. So I want to go back, and so can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when you're doing a DNA analysis?
now, disclaimer, guys. I gotta let you know that, man, I really need you guys to drop a like and a subscribe because these trials are boring. They're boring as hell. Have you ever been to a trial, or have you ever been to court for that matter? I mean, these conversations, they start by asking the names. They ask what the profession is. They ask how long you've been doing it. They ask what techniques you use. They ask how long you've been certified and when was the last time you had to certify yourself, and what is the manner in which the data is collected, and who extracts the data, who analyzes the data, who measures the data. I mean, this is a lot, and they do this with every single witness. So these are really, really long trial periods. I'm talking about 4+ hours. So to get some of these gems in the right nook and crannies and be able to get the overall picture, I mean, that's a plus for y'all. So I'm doing this for you guys. So please like and subscribe. Get back to the show.
What is it that you're looking for?
For the analysis that I'm doing, I am processing for STRs, or short tandem repeats. These are small fragments of DNA that are located in our DNA genome. They repeat a certain number of times. When I first began DNA casework, I was processing 15 STRs plus the amelogenin or sex-determining marker, and now the technology has gone to 24 STRs.
So when you say short,
later received in evidence, and it should not be used as a substitute for evidence. Only items of evidence received will be available to you for consideration during your deliberations. So at this time, this is not in evidence, it's demonstrative.
Mr.
So that's what the judge was just talking about. What I mentioned earlier is that some of the evidence didn't make it into trial before the said deadline. So the prosecutors kind of fell on the ass on this one. And now they can have a person testify on the information, but the information will not be entered into the books or the record.
May I interrupt? Mr. Rhodes, can you explain kind of what this chart is?
So this is an alleged paragraph. This is one of the pages. They're typically on 2 or 3 pages, based on whether it's a single source or a mixture profile. As you see across the top, there's some red boxes. And
So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see.
there's these red boxes, and then you'll see a bunch of letters and numbers. To the left, you'll see D8S1179. That is one location that I am testing for. It's on the 8th chromosome. I would call it D8 for short. And as you go across to the right, you'll see D21 for short, D18 for short. And these are the locations, or these are the specific STRs that I'm analyzing.
So again, a lot of this stuff goes way over my head. I can imagine just sitting there and listening to this and thinking, I don't understand nothing these people are saying. Basically, what he says is, we got DNA, we got a lot of DNA. We only got DNA from the victims and the unrelated unknown persons, which I guess they're not allowed to refer to him directly as Melly, so they have to say it that way. Again, a lot of this stuff goes over my head. I'm just kind of paying attention to see what the reactions are, and it looks like the defense does not want any of this evidence in, and they're successful at basically making some of it inadmissible. So again, another win for Melly. Really, this trial can go on for days and they can go through every single expert, but I think the one most compelling argument is definitely going to be the coroner.
In terms of,
so right now, it looks like the biggest witness that we have not seen yet is most likely the coroner. Now, the coroner is going to tell us where the individuals got shot, the most important, which shots were the fatal shots, and from which direction the shots came from. Once we know that, we have a pretty good idea of, you know, how they actually died. Did they die from a drive-by, or did they die from close gunshot wounds? And that's very, very, very important for the jury to kind of get the story on how it is these victims ended up dead. And I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be the most nervous part for the defense, being that they kind of smooth sailed through this whole DNA and cell phone process, which is, I mean, let's be honest, this is the peak of the trial right now. This is the peak, and it's not looking good for the prosecution. After the mistrial was denied, it actually helped the defense. So they got to really scramble on this last one and these last couple, witnesses, to convince the jury that, you know, the right decision is to send a man on the death penalty. And yeah, I'm not really feeling what the prosecution brought to the table so far, and the general consensus is the same. I'm sure Melly fans are pretty happy, whether or not he did it or not. That's on you. I choose to stay partial on this because it's just a very interesting trial to look over, especially with the new change in the death penalty being enacted by Governor DeSantis, last April. So all this stuff is really, really just kind of new, and you know, I think that's why a lot of people are paying attention. So give a like and subscribe if you like these clips and these summaries on the trial. They take a long time to do just because you got to extrapolate the important information. So thanks.
you said it's a D8. Is that the address of where this STR is located?
That's as opposed to moistening a cotton tip swab and then swabbing it, just in case the small blood stain becomes too diffuse on the cotton tip swab. And why that's important is I do my best to preserve evidence for future testing. So.
It's still up in the air, and the prosecution doing their best to get them answered. Right now, Kurt Rhodes on the stands. He's the DNA dude, and he's trying to help this jury understand what happened that night when these two men died. Let's go back into the courtroom.
What is that described as? I'm sorry, 24. We just finished 23. Item 24. What is that described as?
The cutting blood stain on rear of t-shirt, Drew Philbedit, CG10.
Did you do a DNA analysis on item number 24?
I did. It was interpreted as originating from a single male contributor.
And were you able to make a reasonable or a likelihood ratio as to which individual contributed to that blood stain?
I did the comparisons to the three individuals. The DNA results are at least 1.59 times 10 to the 25th, or 15.9 septillion times more likely if they originated from Mr. Thomas, Christopher Thomas.
So he said in the beginning, if we missed this, that a lot of what he does is based off of statistics. So when you hear this, a 1.1 to the 10th power stuff that he's saying, and he's basically just going over the probability and the likelihood of that sample tracing back to the individual.
Then if they originated from one unrelated unknown individual.
Were you able
Mr. Henry and Mr. Williams were excluded as contributors.
That's my next question.
Like I said, I think it's going to all come to a head with the coroner. I think at the very least, they'll get some kind of emotional response from the jury in terms of how heinous crime was and how the victims passed away. Is that enough to get a conviction? I would hope so. And if not, then, Melly may walk. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Listen.